welcome back to Guitars and Music Tech. Today we are going to talk about tubes, the magic of tubes. The tube is basically the main component of an amplifier, a tube amplifier, where the signal is amplified. And today I'm just going to throw to you a few examples, a few ideas of why. To analyze a little bit, of course, you know that a modular is just a computer, right? It's a software. But a tube is an analog device. And it's just like a bulb, a light bulb. It has a filament. It heats up. And you play your guitar. The signal comes out from your guitar, goes to the amplifier, through the tube, gets amplified, then through the speakers, and then you hear it. So what's so magical about that little tube that's going on? In general, electrons are what making the magic. And literally, inside the tube, when you play a note on your guitar, the signal, which is basically electrons moving from your electric guitar, we'll discuss this next time, going to your tube, and it's jumping in the vacuum inside the tube from where you see that little glow, the little filament. All the electrons have been heated and they're floating around. So when you play a note, gets amplified, the electrons are jumping from there and being amplified. That means there's more of them going to the other side inside the tube. And that's how the sound, very simply, this is how the sound is getting amplified. You have a stream of electrons jumping from one part to the other inside the tube. And this, in my opinion, is what makes the magic. Because there's no other place in electronics where actually the electrons are jumping in vacuum, in space, from one side to the other. And that's what they call the vacuum tube. They remove the air so that the electrons don't have a lot of atoms to bump into, and also the filament won't get oxidized and burn out. So those electrons, when you boost more the volume of your amp, what happens is the saturation. And the saturation inside the tube is like nothing else. And it clips the top of the waves, and it amplifies harmonics. And when it gets amplified, there's a limit of how far you can go. So that's what we call saturation. It's saturated. And then the top of that wave starts to be cut off. And with other equipment, not tubes, it will be cut like a knife. Like you'd go and cut it, and it will be very harsh sounding. But the tube, what happens, it makes it very, very smooth, very round. It stays round, and it amplifies the lower harmonics at the same time as it's doing this. And this is where the beauty and the saturation and the distortion that's coming out of the tube is so nice to hear, to listen to. Modulars do this by software. That means they will, okay, well, this is the top of, so we're going to try and make it round. So they calculate and they make it round, and then they put it back. And that's why it sounds similar to a tube amp. But this is just a part of it. There's, as I told you, there's a lot of things going on inside a tube. It's very complicated to explain. You have to go through all physics and quantum mechanics and electrons and how they work. I don't think it's the place for us to do this. I just want to give you an idea that the electrons here are physically jumping from one part to the other inside the tube. And this is where your sound's going through. And in my opinion, this is part of what happens and the magic that's going on, because it's very complicated what happens in the quantum world. And when we say quantum world, you will hear about this very soon. Quantum computers, quantum mechanics. You heard this before. Very interesting field of study. You'll learn a lot of things. But for our purpose here, the electron is a quantum particle, so that it's too small to see. And we just measure it. And since it's jumping from one place to another, its behavior also is kind of like predictable and unpredictable at the same time. And it's the magic. It's the magic of the tube. So if someone tells you, oh, this tube has magic, yes, it has some type of magic, because to mimic what's going on and the behavior of the electrons jumping in this vacuum from one part from the filament to the other part is not that easy to do. As I said, a software is a software. It calculates, right? And it has a limit of how much it can calculate. On top of that, the tube is vibrating, is moving, is being affected by a lot of other things. Some tubes, when they go bad, we call them become microphonics, meaning you tap on it with your hand, with your finger, and you can hear a sound coming out of the speaker. And why is that? It's basically you're pushing some electrons to jump when you're touching it. And imagine you're playing guitar and the volume is loud and your guitar is loud. It's vibrating the tube. Before it turns bad and it's finished, it's still doing some kind of microphonics, but at the frequency level. That means it's kind of resonating a little bit. It's giving a feedback a little bit from the sound, and that adds to the magic of what the tube is doing. And it becomes like a little compressor by itself. That's why when I use tube amps, I never feel like I need to put a compressor in the beginning of the chain. When I'm using transistors or modelers, there's always a compressor in the beginning because the sound is dull and it dies out. But with the tube, it's so rich and you don't need it. So that's what I said before last week about it will make you sound better. It will make you play better. So that's also what's going on inside the tube. So I hope, I'm going to keep it short this time. I hope that you got a little idea of why it's magical. And try to get a tube in your signal somewhere. It doesn't have to be all tube amp to get to this magic. As long as you are able to tap into that little vacuum of space where the electrons are jumping in space into another part of the universe, which is received and then amplified, that becomes the magic. Think about it. It's like you're tapping into the whole universe there of quantum mechanics with those electrons. And if you have time and you're interested, look about electrons. The world is running about those little tiny, we call them negatively charged particles, which are electrons. And everything is like electricity is electrons. When we look at anything, the light coming out of it is because of the electrons. The light itself is coming from electrons moving into different orbits and emitting those electromagnetic waves. So there's a lot of things. It's very complicated. I said we're not going to go into quantum physics and physics just to know why our guitar amp works. I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible while still making interesting and getting it to understand. So now you know that the electricity, which is the signal that's coming out of your guitar, is really literally jumping into space inside that tube. So it's not the same electrons, it's other electrons, but they are floating inside the tube. Thank you and see you next time.